And we have a question from the audience who is live. Go ahead.
So it was just a thought I was having a little earlier. It was about possibly implementing taxes on religious organizations. Now, from the pro side on that, I understand when it comes to like your mega churches, like the reasons why we should consider putting taxes on them and all the stuff they do and don't do. I mean, you see these videos of preachers, they're yelling at their congregation to give them more money for their third private jet. But then there's also the how much nuance should there be for like the small local ones that, you know, they don't have that much money, and these especially are the ones that don't try to get involved in politics and stuff like that. Because like also with the mega churches, we see how so many of those pastors and preachers, they involve politics in their sermons. So I guess it was more like just a thought, like what could be the nuance difference between the big and the small ones in terms of implementing taxes on them?
Yeah, I don't think that should be the deciding factor is big versus small. It should be how much good do you do in the community. We should be, and we don't always, but we should be raising taxes to improve the community on which those taxes are levied. And the reason why churches have not been taxed was because they were providing some good in the community. And so if you have a church that is out there feeding the poor and providing programs outside of their church, not just for the church members, but outside of the church, I just like, you know, we do here at the ACA, then I have no problem with those churches. On the other hand, any church that is making a profit and being run like a business, I'm looking at you, Joel Osteen, that's a problem. That is a huge problem because they're not. He's not doing anything in the community. He's doing stuff for his people, for his church, but it's not anything outside of that community. You don't see anything that I'm aware of in the Houston community done by Joel Osteen out there.
So it would be like a progressive tax based on how much or how little charitable work they do.
Yeah, I think at this point, with, you know, they should have to go through the same standards that we do, right? If you open a church, you have to fill out no paperwork, you have to do no justification, you don't get to do it, you don't have to do anything, you don't have to justify anything. If you knew the amount of paperwork that it takes to keep the governments, state, local, and federal off our backs, I think that jaws would drop, especially when you compare that amount of paperwork to what a church has to do, which is, to the best of my knowledge, zero. I think Johnny occasionally plays a lawyer on TV.
Yeah. No, my thought on this is transparency. The difference between a regular nonprofit and a religious nonprofit is that a 501c3 non-religious nonprofit organization has to show their work, has to make their books transparent, has to make it available for inspection, and organizations like the ACA and other organizations like that are non-religious or anti-religious, however you want to put it, in nature, don't have that cloud that they can just descend upon it. And I think that the people themselves, if they saw where the money was being spent, they might decide, well, gee, Joel Osteen or some Creflo Dollar or these other alleged charlatans that are out there, if they saw where the money went, they might say, well, gee, this isn't where I want the money to go. I want it to go someplace else. But they have a strong political pull. And in order to make that happen, you would have to get people to elect people who would be willing to put their political future on the line to put those new regulations and laws in place to do so. However, until the non-believing community in this country and other places are of enough political force to make that happen, you'd be flushing your career down the toilet if you were a politician. So they get away with it. And the politicians are thinking in short term and in medium term. They're thinking in term.
Yeah.
Like, can they get back elected again? And there's plenty of Mr. Smiths go to Washington, I'm sure. But it's a political decision. And also when you have examples of preachers, like you had mentioned, who go on the pulpit and start preaching politics, you have to enforce the rule prohibiting political speech. And again, it's a political dead end to do so.
You also need to fund the IRS.
Right.
One of the things back in the 80s that the Scientologists did was they said, because the IRS is going to tax them as a for-profit entity. And the reason they ended up not doing it was because the Scientologists, a number of them, of their parishioners, whatever you want to call them, sued the IRS. And the only way the lawsuits were going to go away is if the IRS granted Scientology tax-free status. And so the reason that the IRS is forced in that position is because they did not have the money to fund the lawyers to fight the lawsuits. And the Scientologists knew that. So it's also a matter of funding the IRS. But also you've got to, like Johnny said, you have to have politicians with the chutzpah to actually go after some of these hate preachers and some of these people who are clearly preaching from the pulpit and violating existing laws. So it's a complex beastie, but I think that for the most part, most churches aren't doing a bare minimum of helping in the community and doing more than feeding the poor. And I think there's probably 15, 20 churches that we could probably throw a stone at from where we're sitting right now, and probably only 3 of them actively have some sort of food bank going on.
And even the ones that do charitable work, good for them. Mm-hmm. Is it the most efficient way of doing it? Are there better, more effective ways of getting the goods and services to the people who need them than through a charity? Again, if it were transparent, we could examine how effective they are. How much money goes to overhead? How much money goes to Rolexes?
Right.
How much money goes to, I don't know, luxury goods of one kind or another, or inefficient ways of getting the funds to the people who need them? Even if there's no bad action taking place, if a significant portion is inefficiently directed to the people who need it, what good is that? And again, if churches had to show their books, then we would know. Then I might not go to the First Baptist Church, who does a really good job. I might go to the Second Baptist Church, who does an even better job. I don't know. But and as our numbers increase, as religious numbers go down, as we continue to show that we are normal human beings who aren't filled with nihilistic tendencies, who actually aren't preparing for end times, and
don't wear tinfoil hats.
Don't wear tinfoil hats. We're not trying to expedite the end of the world for sweet Genghis to come back and kill everybody. As our numbers increase, we may see more political pressure, perhaps within our lifetimes, but maybe it won't be. Yep.
It's a more complicated answer than I think you're looking for, but...
Yep.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks.